Hello there, my name's Card, and here on my YouTube page I like to make simple little videos about things that cross my mind. Recently, I've been trying to get more into YouTube drama, and trying to develop an appreciation for and an understanding of how people make themselves careers, mostly off of watching and responding to other people's online content. And one thing that seems basically industry standard among drama YouTubers and live streamers is that they all largely just watch something, going in blind, and they say their thoughts as they go. Personally, I think it's kind of a weak format for actually responding to the content of any given video. I would much rather prefer to see basically something with structure. You show a relevant clip from someone, then respond with a pre-planned, scripted counter to it, where you articulate your specific disagreement, and repeat that process as much as necessary to make your point. Because with a live format, not only are you likely to end up making your audience sit through a bunch of content that might not amount to much of any value just to get to the good bits, but if you're responding blindly to a new thing every day, you might just end up doing a several hour long live stream where it turns out you didn't have much to say at all. And we, the viewers, don't get to hear any real definitive statements from you, the personality we're ostensibly listening to get specifically your commentary on the issue. It really highlights a gap between what I would call response videos and react videos. There's nothing wrong with liking or watching or making the react content, of course, but it is just something I've noticed, and I'm sure if you've ever thought about it, you could explain and understand the difference too. Some of the streamers out there will go for up to 8 hours a day, and while I can respect the hustle of it all, they can end up only really saying a few impactful statements throughout the whole thing. I ran into this problem recently when I was trying to find out what the kerfuffle with Mutaha from Some Ordinary Gamers was about a month or so ago now. As far as I can tell, the problem was that Mutaha was collaborating with someone with at least borderline pedophilic undertones. Then he announced that he was breaking off that professional relationship. Then he apparently went back on that decision, and then when questioned about why he did all that, Muta equivocated so much he ended up looking bad from almost every possible angle. Okay, fair enough. But while I was trying to figure all this out, I ended up listening to a bunch of streams from someone who seemed to be covering the story as it unfolded pretty closely. This fella, Kuihman. And like a lot of go-in-blind React streamers, a relatively large chunk of this guy's content is not exactly him articulating a response to the situation at length. It's mostly little quips here and there. At no point does Kuihman ever do anything like a video essay where he summarizes what happened and what his take is. What we get is a drip feed of off-the-cuff opinions over the course of like a half dozen live streams. And I couldn't help but notice, anytime the topic of the videos he's responding to veers closely to a matter of whether or not this person Mutaha was collaborating with, Nuxtaku, is or was certifiably a pedophile because he's obviously way too comfortable with loli hentai drawn child porn, Kuihman often says something off the top of his head that's just a little bit suspect. And after a while, you might start inadvertently noticing something of a pattern in everything Kuihman says on the subject. So I just wanted to quickly run through a few examples of what I've picked out. Bear with me, then I'll do some reflecting on what we'll all have just heard. So first thing that perked my ears up here, if you go back to the earlier parts of this story and how Kuihman covered it, naturally he starts at the point where Mutaha is giving his initial side of the story and distancing himself from Nuxtaku. And there's a point where Muta is describing how one of Nuxtaku's actions that should have been a red flag in retrospect, that he called out, was this incident where Nux, I believe, made a thumbnail that was a hentai image of a dog raping an underage Game of Thrones character. And here, Kuihman kind of shrugs that off entirely, makes a sarcastic quip about how it's not a big deal, and that Muta isn't making a belatedly fair point in owning up to not condemning this earlier.
And honestly, you should never even have done this in the first place. But yeah, this is one of those things that kind of like obviously was brought up.
Guys, making dog rape thumbnails, that's not okay. That's not cool, guys. Okay.
And it's one thing
Mutar's taking a hard stance 3 years later. Alright, guys, dog rape thumbnails, not cool.
that
Strange, but I thought maybe Kuihman was just attempting to be critical of Muta here on the basis that the critique was coming late. But he was just articulating it pretty poorly and coming a bit off the mark here because it's a live react. But then, getting a bit further into the story, this trend begins to emerge where Kuihman expresses the fact he doesn't think Nuxtaku has done anything worth condemning, even knowing that his stock and trade is explicitly underage-looking loli hentai. And he seems to want to frame any attempt to try and condemn Nuxtaku on the basis that his stuff is pedophilic as too much of a reach.
This is the exact bullshit they were trying to pull. I remember, I do not give a fuck about Loli. Okay, I cannot overstate this. I don't want to give anyone the impression I'm going after Nux about Loli. I don't care. I don't care.
Keep in mind, in that clip, the greater context was that the, in my opinion, justified outrage over the fact that a cartoon child porn artist Nuxtaku had been courting was drawing images of Keemstar's real-life daughter, which Kuihman brushes aside, as if he doesn't even understand why people find someone who would proudly draw that sort of thing, or people who want to associate themselves with someone who would proudly draw that sort of thing, so morally reprehensible. Throughout this whole part of the story, as he starts to get more and more people in his own chat expressing that they think Nux is in the wrong here, and as Kuihman pads out his coverage by going through other streamers' reactions to the story, the line we hear from him more often than any other is variations on the classic loli apologist argument, why do you care, they're only cartoons?
I don't care. I don't care. It's fucking cartoons.
This was starting to raise more and more red flags in my eyes. But where I really started having to double take what I was hearing from Kuihman was when the big Mutaha Mea Culpa video came out, and Muta was in his apologetic arc and trying to address some of the issues that people were bringing up about him. Because this is how Kuihman approached the issue of Muta flip-flopping.
Dude, these people are so fucking weak. It's crazy. It's so fucking... Why do they get so antsy? Why do they get so antsy about being called, like, pedo defender? Just because, like, maybe they have, like, a stance that some fucking retard on Twitter doesn't like.
Kuihman asks, why would someone get so antsy about being called a pedophile defender? Now, I would have thought it would be obvious, because being a pedophile defender is a bad thing. No one normal would like to be called that. Hey you watching the video right now, would you like it if someone called you a pedo defender? No, you wouldn't. Kuihman, apparently, doesn't understand that, or intuit why that is. And I think that being a pedo defender is bad is not just the opinion of some retards on Twitter. Thinking that being a pedo defender is bad is a very normal, common opinion, and surely everyone who is not out to defend pedophiles doesn't like to be called a pedophile defender. I really truly think it's great that almost everyone online, regardless of their other political leanings, we can all sit down together and shake hands and agree that pedophilia is bad. I feel like that the vast majority of people who do any sort of politically tinted content online, from the liberals to the tankies to the anarchists and all the flavors of various commentary chud on the other side, everyone can agree pedophilia is bad, being a nonce is bad, and loli hentai is definitely intentionally an attempt to sexually draw children, and that's bad. But Kuihman alone dares to ask, why would you care if people thought you were a pedophile? It's no biggie. And here, when I was starting to think there's no way he couldn't say anything else worse, you're about to see Kuihman reacting to Xanderhall here. And say what you want about Xanderhall, that he's a big lib, bad with money, dumb, stoner, filming in a church basement, maybe wants to kill his editors, looks like he has AIDS. Yeah, we've heard it all. But he's actually going to make a very cogent point here about how the Nuxtaku Loli fixation was being played off as a joke right up until it wasn't, and that someone calling him out should have come a lot sooner. Kuihman here has now inexplicably turned his face cam on to give his hot take that jokingly being a pedophile is actually just like a harmless goof among pals and really funny.
Maybe in 2014, that kind of stuff was seen as edgy memes and jokes, but in 2017, you're drawing lolicon, that shit's gonna end you, right? And it no longer got taken as the joke that people shrugged it off as for years and years and years, and they took it seriously. The same thing's happening with Nuxtaku right now. It's gonna happen to other content creators too. I'm so glad we're heading in that direction, but boy, would I prefer if it was faster, you know? I would really prefer if it was quicker. That like these things stop being played off as jokes and accepted as jokes or memes. They're not jokes or memes. No one jokes about being a pedophile.
Yes, they do.
Find that funny. No one wants. No
Yes,
one finds
they
it funny
do.
for people to
What?
as a joke. Think
Yes,
that
they
they're a
do.
pedophile, okay?
Yes, they do. Yes, they literally. That's incredibly funny. It's incredibly funny to joke about being a pedophile. Actually, it's incredibly funny.
Now, you might think Kuihman's just being edgy and contrarian for the sake of being an edgy contrarian internet persona or something. But he spends an awfully long time defending the thing Nuxtaku was doing that started all this, where he'd do YouTube videos accessible to kids no less, where he'd watch and react to loli hentai videos. And here, Kuihman then pulls some data completely out of his ass, source, trust me bro, doesn't do so much as cite anything at all, but he asserts that actually Nuxtaku having this video series where he would watch loli stuff with Muta and his other collaborators would actually make him less likely to ever really molest a kid or something. And if you say otherwise, or if you still think that watching loli hentai is wrong, then he thinks you're just virtue signaling. And even worse, you're not even trusting the BS lolicon science he's just made up. Get a load of this.
That if someone consumes lolicon and is able to be open, like not open about it as in do it openly, but like talk to people about it, that they're less likely to offend. And if they watch lolicon and they don't talk to anyone about it, then they are more likely to offend. So if someone is like totally, when someone has a paraphilia, if they have people that they can discuss it with and talk about the urges they're feeling, they are less likely to feel pigeonholed, trapped, and end up acting on whatever urge, whatever usually either self-detrimental or harmful to others urge that they're experiencing. That generally tends to lower the risks of that. I thought Xanderhall was a data guy who was all about uncomfortable data. I guess not, though. I guess he just wants to virtue signal like a fucking loser.
Now, where does this leave us? Well, here's the thing. Like I said at the top of the video, one of the main things about React streamers is how they do this stuff for sometimes 8 hours a day, and even if you comb through a lot of their content on double speed, you still only end up getting a few relevant things to clip out here and there. With Kuihman specifically, I don't necessarily think you could properly, definitively make a judgment call on whether or not he's secretly a massive nonce himself, based off of just what you get by looking for his reactions to stuff when he's covering a topic like loli hentai in the YouTube commentary community. But I do think there's something here that I'd like to see interrogated a little bit further. Now, I'm not a debater or an interviewer or in that commentary circle of creators at all. I'm merely a hobbyist. But wouldn't it be really swell if one of the established, experienced, big names in the space maybe got Kuihman on a call or something and got him to give some definitive statements about where he lands on the issue? Because I, for one, think that being into this loli hentai stuff is bad. And you're practically just as bad if you run defense for the people who do openly consume it. And I don't like people who dance around without ever putting their chips down and firmly stating what their beliefs are. I don't want to necessarily accuse Kuihman of being a pedophile or a pedophilia apologist. But I do want to hear him give some definitive statements as to his thoughts on the matter. And don't you? It's just a thought. Anyway, once again, my name's Card. If you might like to hear more from me, feel free to subscribe to this YouTube page, or just take a look at my other videos. Either way, goodbye for now, and have a lovely day.